Okay. Oh, I'm on. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Vis 2022 Town Hall. Thanks so much for coming. Hi, I'm Ross Majeski. I'm one of the Visualization Executive Committee co-chairs, along with my co-chair, Holger here. And so we've got a robust town hall agenda where the goal today is just to talk to you about what the different committees in Vis do, so you get an overview of what's been going on with the visualization committees over the last year, and then to open the floor for questions about any issues or concerns the community might want to bring to these committees to talk about over the coming year. So on our panel, we have Holger Teisel is our VEC co-chair. Petra Eisenberg will represent the Visualization Steering Committee as the co-chair. David Laidlaw is here for the Area Creation Committee. Bongshin Lee is our overall paper chair and Visualization and Graphics Technical Community Chair. Danielle Safer, David Ebert, and Hendrik Strobelt are the current general chairs. Tim Dwyer and Michael Wybrow are the incoming general chairs. Klaus Mueller is here as the TVCG editor-in-chief. And I didn't see Lonnie. Oh, Lonnie, there we go. I'm sorry, Lonnie, I didn't see you there. I knew I was missing somebody. And, I haven't got to Anders yet. He's on my list, don't worry. And Lonnie is here as our open practice chair. And Anders Innerman is our other overall paper chair representing that today. So our agenda today is we're going to give a brief update from the Viz Steering Committee from Petra, an update from the Visualization Executive Committee from Holger. Klaus will provide us an update on TVCG. Bongshin will give a VGTC update. We'll hear an update from the Area Creation Committee, how to get involved in Viz 23, some details about an open practice proposal from Lonnie, and then the floor will open for questions. Please put all your questions in Slido, and then we'll communicate to the panel those questions. All right, thanks everybody. I'll turn it over to Petra.
All right, so hi, I'm Petra Eisenberg. I represent the Visualization Steering Committee. And if you don't know what that is, don't worry, I'll explain it. The committee consists of 9 people. There's a chair, which is Stephen North, and a vice chair, that's myself. And if you want to be a member of the steering committee, there's several ways to become a member. Some people are elected. For example, this year we will have Jeff Hare join us through the community election. Maybe some of you have elected him. And then there's somebody who joins us from another committee that we'll hear about later called the VGTC, which is Jin Vuk So. And then there's somebody we appointed, which is Mariah Meyer, who also joined us this year. What is the steering committee, or what do we do? Generally, it's in the name. So we steer. We think about long-term responsibilities and oversights for IEEE Vis, mostly in the scientific aspects. And what does that mean? What kind of stuff do we talk about? Here's some of the examples that are picked out. It's not everything we talked about. There's a lot more, but here are some that I think are the most interesting. One of the things we spend most of our time on is figuring out who will be on the organizing committee, and we will do that together. We always do that together with the VEC, and there's a lot of factors we take into account. And for example, based on performance and contributions to Viz. But what is new this year, is something we talked about, is a volunteering process. So now you can volunteer for the program committee, you can volunteer for the program committee and the organizing committee. The volunteering for the program committee is what the paper chairs are in charge of. If you want to volunteer for the organizing committee, there's a QR code here you can scan, and there's a form you will see, and you can volunteer. And we cannot take everybody who volunteers, but we do look at the list, and where there's a good fit, we will add people. And we did so this year already. Another example of what we talked about this year is short papers. For example, before it was not allowed to send an extended short paper to the conference, and you could also not go the route of extending it for TVCG and then presenting it at Viz. So now the policy has changed because we wanted to make it more, give it more of a focus on the quality of the program rather than on making outright bans. So now you can extend a short paper. You cannot copy your old short paper and add 30% new content, but you have to focus on the contribution itself, right? If you If you build on a short paper and you have a really novel contribution, you can submit it and it would be acceptable. And it can also be presented. Another change that all of you who registered for the conference saw this year is that we changed the election procedures. Here, our goal was, and this was based on a proposal from the election chairs themselves, who wrote up a proposal and sent it to the steering committee to discuss. So the goal here was to include, first of all, increase voter participation and the diversity of voters. So that requires changing this document called the Charter, the IEEE Vis Charter, which writes down all the governance procedures. So now the rule is that you have to have had at least one year of attendance at the Vis conference, and that's all. You all see in the box in the registration form where you could sign up to be on, in the election register. And then those of you who attended the opening ceremony, you saw that there was this announcement David Ebert made about changes to Plan S. This was a big concern of ours about what we can do to help the authors who have to comply with Plan S and how we can make sure that they can continue to publish at Viz. So we talked to several bodies in the organization to see what we could do. The other thing we're talking about is open practices in general, and Lonnie Besançon, he will talk about that later. If you want to get more detail on all the other stuff we talk about on the steering committee, we have public minutes. You can scan this QR code to find them, or just go on the Viz website, and under governance, there's an entry for steering committee, and you can find a link to all the minutes there. And yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any specific governance oversight questions for the conference. Thanks.
Okay, we come straight to the second governing body of our conference. This is the Vis Executive Committee, and I'm one of the co-chairs, and I want to give you a short update what's going on here. I don't want to make it too formal. I just only want to mention a few things the WEC is involved and the WEC works with. Mainly, the WEC works on operational aspects of IEEE Vis, and sometimes it's not quite clear what is operational, what is scientific. So in quite a lot of things, the WEC and the steering committee has to collaborate and communicate and work together. And I think up to now that works pretty well. For instance, if you want to become a general chair of one of the next Vis conferences, this is something the WEC deals with. So the WEC solicits bids for the future Vis conferences. Also, the pre-approved conferences need to be steered and approved, and this is something on the plate of the WEC. Also, attempts to continue working on the concept of hybrid conferences, and a lot of discussions are going on how to continue this, is something the WEC is concerned with. And also parts of the organizing committee, especially parts, the organizational part of the organizing committee are on the table of the WEC. The WEC consists of 11 members. Here are the names. I don't have pictures, but you know most of them anyway. Some of them are incoming, some of them are outgoing. The rules and to get onto the WEC are slightly complicated. I want to only make it on a very high level. Some of them are elected, and I hope all of you have elected recently the WEC members. Some of them are appointed. And with this, I'm at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, this is interesting.
There's HDMI as well.
Oh, there's sorry about that. Oh. What's going on now? Oh, it's coming. Okay. So hi everyone, I just want to, like Petra already talked about the transformative character of TVCG is the transaction visualization computer graphics, and I'm the EIC, and I'll be going out at the end of the year, and Han-Wei Shen will take over from me. And just want to give you some introduction on like what TVCG is, like by the numbers, and I made this little visualization here with all these numbers. And so year founded was 1995. It's pretty old journal at this point. And we had 7 EICs so far, me included. And there were 3 areas actually. It's not just visualization and visual analytics, it's also VR, virtual reality, and augmented reality, mixed reality, and computer graphics. Okay, so we have actually 3 areas that are there. And accordingly, we have 72 AEs, associate editors, and you have very welcome to volunteer for this. And they break up in these 3 areas and these 3 numbers. And we have 4,700 papers published so far. I don't think this includes the special issues. And in 2021, we had over 1,000 papers that were submitted. And they have to all be reviewed, so it's a big workload. And in 21, we had roughly 5,200 pages. We're going to get more in the future. And we have 15 partner conferences. So there's lots of conferences that where TVCG papers can be presented, and also where we invite best papers. So there's a big venue. So among these is visualization, and we're going to get to this. Impact factor now is 5.226, and it's growing. And so let's go here. So we at Vis 2022, we have 120 papers, and we have a special issue of visualization. We also have special issues of virtual reality and augmented reality. ISMAR is another special issue. And that all these papers will appear in the January 23 issue. And we also have 70 papers that were actually published in TVCG that can then present it here as an oral presentation. So it's kind of like a journal first kind of mix kind of thing, right? Where you can send your paper to TVCG and then present it here as well if it gets accepted by a June deadline, I think mid of June. And I calculated the review times it takes. It's actually quite comparable. Like, when you send in, it oftentimes gets a major revision, and then next thing is the minor revision, and then accept. That's sort of an ideal pipeline. I calculated that the time it takes to go to June is actually comparable to the time when you submit to Vis and get it accepted and presented, right? So it's quite comparable. So it's not that bad. But you have another major revision cycle in it. And what we also have, if you get rejected at the visualization conference, then you can send your paper to TVCG, but it will already count as a major revision. Okay, so you get one more go, and then it either gets accepted or revised and resubmit as new. And you can basically, we guarantee, or not guarantee, but we try to recruit the same reviewers that also reviewed your paper at the visualization conference. So there's reviewer continuity, but sometimes reviewers don't come back, and then we have to find another one. And you can provide a response to the reviews you got at Vis and rebut them or respond to them, and then the reviewers will see that, right? So we have quite a few papers that get submitted that way. Some papers succeed and actually make it to the minor revision. Some papers don't. So I don't really have a statistic on this, but it's a good deal, I think. So if you want to write to TVCG, basically, here's the scope. It's basically computer graphics, information and scientific visualization, visual analytics, and virtual and augmented reality. So it's like this mix. Some papers even bridge this area, then they choose sometimes where they want to be presented. There's a bigger one too, okay? So we don't really accept computer vision papers that are barely just working on images, but we're pretty open to 3D computer vision and things like this. It's a really big area that we cover. And impact factor trends, which is very important for many of you. So we are trailing ACM transaction computer graphics, but the gap is not that big. But we're like sort of in the same sort of league of this. And then there's the other journals that are also visualization that I'm listing down here, which so we're doing quite well. So hopefully you're submitting your work to TVCG or to Vis and then become a part of the special issue. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Do you need this? Oh, there's this.
Cool. Hi, I'm David Laidlaw from Brown University, and I am a member of the Area Curation Committee, which I will tell you a little bit about today. The committee is 9 folks. They get appointed for 3-year terms in sort of rotation, so 3 of us will cycle off next year. The left column shows those people who are in their 2nd year, and the right column shows those people who are in their 1st year. And I don't know what happened to the people in their 3rd year, because that happened before I got started. But somehow they're gone. So let me tell you a little bit about what we're supposed to do. It's a relatively new committee. This is, I think, just the 3rd year, and it's my 1st year, so I missed the first couple of years. We have 3 tasks. One is to produce an annual report on the areas that the papers are divided up into at the conference, and the keywords that they can use to assign the areas, the sort of sub areas within those areas. In addition to that report, we also put out the data that we collect from the papers committee and make that available to anybody who wants to in an anonymized form. Our second goal or second task is to, and based on that report, is to make recommendations to the steering committee about any changes to the sub areas that should be made and or to the keywords. And finally, we're supposed to solicit input from the associated events and from the community. So give us input. Feel free to send any comments you have to me or to other folks on the committee. So a very quick look at a couple of the things we considered for this year. This graph shows the areas and the number of papers submitted and accepted in the conference this year. And last year. So you can see that the red columns are a little bit different than the blue columns. That's how things have changed over the last year. We can fit a line to that since there's only 2 values and predict forever into the future what the values are going to be. No, we can't. So we basically determined on this little bit of input that we have that things are going fine. None of the areas seem like they're declining to nothing and should be removed. None of the areas seem like they're growing tremendously and should be split. So we didn't think that there should be any changes based on that. This shows a graph of all the keywords, and you can probably not make out any of them, but you can look at the data in more detail online. The top row is the keyword frequency for this year, and the second row is for last year, and the third row is for 2020. And I think you can see that, there's some keywords that aren't so represented in the right side, but nothing has declined to 0, and nothing is particularly huge. There are a few things on the left end maybe that could be subdivided or are very common, but honestly, I think that's probably okay at a visualization conference to have some keywords not be super discriminatory. So that's really it. And I will pass the baton on to the next speaker.
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Bong-Shin Lee. I'm the new VGTC chair. Some of you may remember I was elected last December, and I have observed, worked with, and learned from Jim Ahrens, the former chair, since January this year, and I more or less took over more formally from July. So, in fact, under the IEEE CS, there are 31 technical communities, volunteer ways, and VGTC is one of them. And it stands for Visualization and Graphics Technical Community. It used to be committee, and now they made a change. I kind of like this change. It feels more friendly and approachable, at least for me. So why do we exist? And I looked up the Vis Charter, which you can go read from this URL. And I'm not going to go over all these details because I found a little bit easier one in the About Us page. So the VGTC goal is to support and help and foster. So to achieve this goal, what did we do? First of all, we support and provide oversight for IEEE visualization and VR conferences, which include Vis, Pacific Vis, LDEV, BioVis, VR, ISMAR, etc. And I know that most people don't pay attention to the footer of the page, but this is partly why we have this old logo and old name at the bottom of our webpage. Yeah, it has to be changed for next year. The other thing is VGTC is in charge of this award program for both Vis and VR. And I hope you enjoy the VGTC award session yesterday, because it's one of my favorite parts of the Vis conference. And we are committed to support diversity and inclusion. So first of all, we do fund these diversity and inclusion scholarships. And we are finalizing the documents for Code of Conduct and Diversity and Accessibility Guideline, which I think started earlier, and I believe Mariah was also involved in this effort. And we are also trying to help improve the paper review process. So we are trying to learn from other research communities, whether there is any bias or things that we can improve. We are also funding the money needed to improve PCS, because whenever we want to make changes in PCS, it's not for free. And we are also trying to improve paper templates, and I believe Lonnie is going to talk about a little bit further. And I'm hoping that we could also develop the training material for PC members. There has been also the support for cross-conference initiatives. So if you look at the program, there's invited partnership presentation session, and except for the CGNA part, the other three are initiated by VGTC with the help of external people. And I'm happy to tell you that the VR part was started this year. And we get their presentations, but at the same time, some of these papers are presented in these other conferences. And this year, we had several members rotated out after completing their term, and I'd like to thank them for their time and effort. And I also want to welcome the new members who started this year more or less with me. And here are the latest number, and you can go check on the web as well. So again, let us know if you have any ideas or comments how we achieve our goal, which is again, support, help, and foster. And let me conclude by thanking all the people who made this Vis conference possible and successful. Thank you.
Okay. Is there something? Good. Excellent. Oops. Okay. So I am here, I guess, to represent and announce Vis 2023. The general chairs for next year are myself, Tim Dwyer, Michael Wybrow, who's right there, and Sarah Goodwin, who is not here today, but is with us in spirit very much. So Vis 2023 will run in from 21st to 27th of October 2023 in Melbourne, Australia. So I think Sarah, Michael, and I have the records of being the longest serving incoming general chairs.
We're very pleased to have that title. Actually, it's so the conference was originally conceived for Melbourne around 2019, I think, from memory, and of course it's been a journey. Thank you, incredible thanks to Danielle and Hendrik and David for stepping in at relatively short notice. When was that? Sometime last year to host the conference in Oklahoma instead of Melbourne in 2022. We are very grateful for that. When it just became obvious that long distance travel at this time was not going to be easy for a lot of people. So we're anticipating a return to somewhat normalcy in 2023. So hopefully it'll look something more like the conference that we had in Vancouver when we first conceived this conference. How to get involved was the subject for this session. So I think most importantly, please, if you possibly can, do start thinking about how you can get yourself to Australia in 2023. I think the way to do it efficiently is to, and make the best use of resources and so on, is to plan a little trip either side, add a holiday to it, see that part of the world. There are many places on the way to Australia that you can stop over at. Of course, as usual, prepare your papers, think about panel submissions, workshops, tutorials. Volunteer for the program committee or short paper PC, offer to review papers, of course. Our organising committee is nearly finalised. There might be a couple of spare spots if you're interested. Of course, we will very much welcome student volunteers who without this conference probably couldn't possibly happen. And an important thing, support for the conference, financial support in particular, is very, very important. It's been more difficult in recent times, so we have already appointed our supporters chairs, but I think everybody in the Vis community can consider themselves a kind of supporters chair. So if you have any ideas or connections that you can make regarding financial support for the conference next year, please let us know. Lastly, the OC kickoff meeting, if you're in the OC, is on Thursday at 12 p.m. Do please attend if you're here in person. Thank you very much.
All right. Hey everybody, so I'm Lanny Besançon from Linköping University. I'm happy to present here a proposal for open practices at Vis in the coming years that we met with Cody Dean from the Open Practice Committee, and that we talked about with the VAC quite a lot as well. So far when we talked about open science at Vis, we mostly thought of open access. So that is, submitting your preprints to archiving websites like Archive, Diva, HAL, and any other site of the like. And it's not just the Vis community, right? Like this is science overall. When any scientific community, when you talk about open science, most of the things that people think about is open access. And we've been doing pretty good in terms of open access, right? So you have here some figures from past years at Vis that are underestimated, very likely, about open access. So papers that were put either on reliable open access repositories or some open repositories or website that were sometimes personal website or university websites. So we've been doing fairly good in that regard. And we're, I guess, bound to do even better in the coming years thanks to Plan S, and the new agreement has been mentioned a couple of times already, but also thanks to the White House statement that you can see here that all research in the US that is coming from state-funded organization should be open by 2026. So we're very, very likely to do even better in the coming years, which is a good thing. But there's a lot of other forms of things to think about when we think about open science. Because open science is about increasing accessibility, transparency of research, but also transferability, reproducibility, or scrutinizability, for instance. And there's things that we can think about right now in the community that we want to focus on as open data and open materials. And so, but these other forms of open science at Vis, we haven't been faring so well so far, although there's been improvement through time. but there's still a lot of progress that could be made, and this is the focus of this proposal. So our long term for Vis in terms of open science is that research should be accessible to everyone, right? We don't want financial means or privileged access to limit anyone's ability to participate in or to learn from the research that we do. We want research to be transparent, scrutinizable, and trustworthy. So authors should be as transparent as possible, of course, within the limits of what is allowed for them or possible for them, about their research processes and their results. We think that increasing transparency will help reviewers and readers judge for themselves whether the research that they are reading was plausible and whether the results are usable for them in other contexts or transferable. And research should probably be replicable or transferable so that the community can actually reuse the results of others in their own work better. And so what is the thing that we propose to make that happen? We'll have a couple of objectives for 2023. So we want to encourage this submission of supplemental materials for reviewing purposes, mostly at the beginning. So for that, we will provide some recommendation that will assist authors and reviewers on the reviewing of optional supplemental materials. We'll also bring some change to the VGTC format for papers that will allow supplemental materials, figure credits, and acknowledgement to be on the reference-only page of the paper format. So, you're allowed for long papers to submit a 9-page plus 2 pages of references, and these sections could be moved to the 10th page, which right now only contains references. After this 2023, we plan to analyze and survey authors and reviewers' experience so that we can adapt these recommendations. So basically what we want to know there is what people actually submitted in terms of supplemental materials, depending on what papers they also submitted, and how reviewers use that in their reviewing process if they did. From that, we can provide insight and examples of what kind of supplemental materials could be recommended for a different type of submissions in our community. So on that point, we need feedback from you because a lot of the research that has been done in other fields is also done in the Vis community. So the research that is more often quantitative, for instance, has been very much studied, and transparency in this has been really studied in other fields, and we can learn from that. But from all of the other research types that we do at Vis that are not so well covered by the research community, it is a lot harder to learn from other communities, right? And so we would need to get your input on this to get some insight, ideas, feedback on what you think could be ideal or useful supplemental materials submitted by you as an author or as a reviewer or as a reader to reuse your peers' work. So feel free to reach out to us to use this, which is a Google form, to give us some ideas, to contact us by email if you need to. On the Google form, you will see that we encourage you to put your name and email address, but you don't have to. But it's just so that we can reach out to you if there's something that we want to clarify with you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks everybody. We've got a lot of robust questions. I'll try to sort of break these up into the most important ones, but also the ones that are grouped together a little bit. So I think one of the first questions more to the VSC and VEC would be, it seems like we have a larger bureaucracy in terms of committees, et cetera, than other communities our size or larger, for example, CHI. Do we have plans to reevaluate the setup of things and find opportunities to increase efficiency in decision-making?
Sorry, I can completely understand this question. We have so many committees, a steering committee, an executive committee, a VGTC. Is it really necessary to have all of them? This is a good question, and we might reevaluate. The reason that we have them are historically. Remember, we had the situation that we had 3 different communities that were just growing together, and that's basically the result. And I think we spent a lot of effort in recent years to make this revised process to come together. Sooner or later, I think we have to reevaluate if it's really necessary to have this structure of these different committees. My personal feeling is we should do this and evaluate how the current structures are working, but probably not now. Now we should work a while with them, and then we just should evaluate them and not start a revise 2 process immediately after revise 1 is finished.
I would just like to address the second part of the question. It sort of seems to imply that we are inefficient in decision making. That's not my feeling, at least for the steering committee and the executive committee. We're communicating quite well with each other, and the decisions are not that slow. If there was any particular incident that triggered that feeling of inefficiency, I would like to hear about it, but I'm not sure. Does anyone else want to address this?
Great. Thanks. So the next set of questions are focused a lot more on sort of the hybrid aspect of Viz. And we had one of the most top voted questions here as more of a comment. This is a kind reminder of the importance of hybrid for developing countries. For those of us that join from the globe, from the South, hybrid enables opportunities to participate in the conference that wouldn't be available otherwise. It really makes an impact for us. But this leads into a series of questions that are also important on, oh, sorry, it's hard to navigate Slido sometimes. So we had a question about innovations. For example, hybrid satellite events the pandemic has forced upon us have been largely successful. How are we considering the longevity and continuity of these innovations and the impact of the conference experience? For example, making the conference focused on social interaction, work in progress versus talks on completed work. What are some of the thoughts on these recent innovations as we're moving towards this hybrid conference mode? And that may be a combination between what are ideas for the hybrid conference in 2023, as well as what are ideas for the hybrid conference beyond 2023. Sure.
So speaking from 2022 into the future, I think it's good that we had kind of a little experiment this year to figure out what might work in practice and what might work in the future. And I also think that the first comment is very important, so that we really have outreach to regions where we might not have outreach without being hybrid. Yet, there's also a cost attached to this. And this is not only a financial cost, that's also a human, I don't want to say human resource, because that's such a weird word, but there's a volunteer cost attached to this, because the volunteers this year spent hours and hours of working to make the tech setup happen and to make it work and get everything into it. So I think the real, or the tricky question will be, what is the nice compromise between being hybrid, being live hybrid, versus what is affordable in terms of human and money. Danielle?
Just to toss in an additional measure here for folks who didn't catch it in the Viz Welcome, I think we had, out of 1,300 participants, over 200 qualified under diversity and inclusivity. So that suggests, to the point that was raised, that it is definitely having an impact and it's a real trade-off to be considering.
I have a comment on this as well. I think there was like this effort of satellite conferences where there's like local regions that have like sort of a event there that is synchronized with the main conference. I think I saw some events like this, I think in China and Hong Kong, on one of the Zoom conferences. So that's like an opportunity to involve like local communities into the conference, by organizing this locally. I mean, I don't know how many of them are actually we have right now of these sort of satellite conferences, but that was an idea we floated.
Yeah, this idea of satellite conferences, we have played around in the last 2 years when we had completely virtual conferences. Then in addition, we had the satellite conferences. For this year, we also in the WEC thought about this to have, in addition to the main conference, some satellite conferences. And we decided not to do this and focus on the main conference to make sure that we have enough people here. For Melbourne for next year, there are no particular plans out it. Up to now, I'm not aware of particular plans to re-establish the satellite conferences. If there is a strong voice from the community that we definitely want to have it in addition to the main conference and in addition to the hybrid and the online conferences, then we should start discussing about this again.
Let me follow up with the next question, because I saw Tim was about to comment, but this next question probably directly ties into what he's going to say. For the VEC and the GCs of 2023, what might hybrid Viz look like next year?
Yeah, so let me first say we definitely don't want to exclude anybody. There are many factors that are sort of going into our decision making on this at the moment, though. A big one is the time zone is not great for live streaming from Australia to places like North America and Europe. So a synchronous hybrid event doesn't seem like it would be very useful and would be very expensive. So we are not thinking along those lines at the moment. We are planning to make the content available as much as we can asynchronously, and we're very open to the idea of satellite conferences that can host the time-shifted content. We did that ourselves in Melbourne last year for Vis 2021 and had a good time doing that, although we were in lockdown ourselves, but let's not talk about that.
All right, the next set of questions are focused a little bit on specific issues related to how bids are selected. So for example, having bids hosted in countries that are making traveling very restricted is also not continuing to enhance the diversity participation or plans to mitigate this. I guess, Holger, if you want me to answer that one, I can take the first stab. For the bidding for conferences, this takes place 3 years in advance. It is very difficult to predict what changes in government regulations, travel restrictions, and things will occur within 3 years. We do the best we can to try to have Viz in different sites around the country to help mitigate, around the world, to help mitigate these sorts of issues. These are things that are always discussed in the bidding process. And of course, if you would like to host Viz, we get about 2 submissions for bids per year. So please volunteer to be the general chair and bring it to your part of the world.
Ross, just one more comment on that in relation to Australia. So Australia is very open at the moment. There are no restrictions beyond the normal visa processes for people who require them. And last I heard, visas take about several weeks to process. So should be no problem from the submission date to the time of the conference. And most people in Western Europe and North America don't require visas for Australia, or only online things.
Anybody else? Okay. The next question is quite a bit of change of topic here. So there was a comment about planned changes to the paper template. The paper and reference formats are a major barrier for authors coming from fields that work primarily in Word rather than LaTeX. The Word template is terrible. I shouldn't have to learn to code to participate in this community. What are ideas that we're doing to help with this barrier?
So we do have a person in charge of the template function. Do you want to? There's a publications chair on the VGTC level who's responsible for the template. And my recommendation would be to approach this person and explain what the problem is with the Word template and to see if something can be done.
Yeah, so for the person giving us that comment, if you want to email us and we can chat and try to see what we can do with those issues.
Yeah.
The next one is maybe also in similar vein about accessibility. Can we do a better job making our content accessible to people outside of the conference using the website? Should we prioritize organizing and exposing the content in a digestible fashion for practitioners? So for example, in previous years, we marked papers as for practitioners and other things. What are other ideas we might have to make things more exposed to the outside community?
Well, the answer is yes, I agree. There's not much more. I have no good idea, no good answer to this, except for yes, we should go for this and do this.
We have these wonderful open practices chairs here who you can approach and then work with them and see what can be done. I mean, everything here is volunteer-based. If you have good ideas, approach the right people, look at the organizing committee, volunteer for the roles. I posted the link to volunteer for a specific role. So if you great ideas for accessibility, I think we have even chairs on accessibility, no? Yeah, we have, okay, so we have accessibility chairs as well, who you can approach depending on, what kind of accessibility you're talking about. And yeah, sometimes they're really happy about initiatives and ideas of what they could try.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that VGTC can also help, not just for Vis, but other conferences under VGTC. So if you have some specific suggestions or ideas, feel free to send it to VGTC, and we will try to address it.
Great. And for a follow-up question on that, as the amount of content at IEEE Vis increases from TVCG, those papers are not necessarily put out in an easy accessible format for our attendees at Vis since they're under the TVCG banner. Is there thoughts on how to be able to get those papers into the USB that goes to attendees or other things since those are here under a different sort of source? Did that make sense? Hopefully how I described that.
The problem is the acoustics aren't very good here. You said like if those the TVCG papers can be on the USB.
So yeah, so we have authors that submit to TVCG, get accepted, and then present at Vis. Those papers are not always accessible to the Vis attendees, correct?
No, they're not. They're not. But yeah, that's just the business model that IEEE has. Yeah. So, but hopefully open access gonna come through, and then people will have these papers accessible in other ways.
Okay, so as TVCG moves into the hybrid Plan S, that would indicate that.
Yeah,
okay,
eventually, yeah. That's the only thing I can say.
Okay. All right, we'll switch topics again.
Maybe one thing I can add on that topic. So not all papers will be open access through Plan S because not everyone will be impacted by Plan S. But there's always the possibility with IEEE, TVCG, and Vis to have a preprint of your paper online, right? No matter where you come from. And so just a reminder to authors that didn't do it for the papers at TVCG to potentially do that before. And then the papers are findable not through the link on the website, because I don't think we can do that, but then you can just Google it and find access to it right away.
Great. Thank you. And for the ACC and OPC, are there any insights and discussion points you might share about the acceptance rate imbalances between the different areas in the papers this year?
Definitely. I would say that I would probably be more worried if it was balanced, because I think it's a part of the whole process. If you look at how we are working across the areas, one of the great advantages that I see of having the area model and the overall papers chairs is the calibration that we do between the areas. Based on the selection and the reviewing process, we are looking at the borderline cases of the papers, scrutinize them between the areas, and it's the role of the overall papers chairs. And we have online sessions to do exactly that kind of calibration. And I think if we ended up with an exact fair division of acceptance rate between the areas, I think that would be a failure. So I think this is where the role of the calibration and the purpose of the unified conference really comes to play, is that we are looking at the quality across the areas in this hierarchical process that is introduced with the overall paper chairs and the area chairs. For me, that's been one of the most rewarding parts of the whole process, is to ensure that quality by having that process in place and that discussion of scientific quality across the areas.
Okay. We'll get back to a fun, controversial topic now. So we changed the paper presentation links this year, and this was a big experiment. This was a very large internal discussion between VEC and VSC and others and the general chairs. And we have two conflicting questions or comments here where Was it, do we need long paper presentations? Should we change the poster only? Or how can we come back to longer, more in-depth paper presentations? I can go ahead and give the first answer to this, is this was an experiment. I would say anything that the VEC or VSC implements is always an experiment. We should not ever be locked into saying we did this way this year and we should do it, ad infinitum. There will be a survey at the end of this conference asking you questions about this, and we strongly encourage everybody to give us feedback on how you like these changes in presentation links. I don't know if the VSC and VEC representatives up here want to provide any more. No.
Yeah, so on the steering committee, we did discuss this. One of the committee generally was concerned, especially about really short question times. So please answer the survey Ross just mentioned when it gets sent to you, because that we will look at it and we will make decisions. And there's some other decisions around that. If people, for example, if the data says people want longer times, then where do we cut to make room for longer papers? And that is going to be a much more extensive discussion, but it is on everyone's radar, and we're looking at it.
Yeah, it would also be good to hear your responses about if you like the Slido-based question format, or if you also like that people would actually go to microphone and raise their questions there. So that would be also interesting to know. I find this also very interesting experiment.
Okay, and this is my favorite comment so far that we've got. The highest voted one so far is thank you everyone for all of your great effort and dedication. So that's, but I don't want to ignore this question because it's come up a couple times and somehow got deleted from Slido earlier, but is there anything planned to reduce the enormous carbon costs of Vis 23 being in Australia?
My best advice is, as I said before, make the most of the trip. So don't just come for the duration of the conference. Try and plan a vacation or an academic stay on either side of the conference. There are ways to offset your carbon cost, of course, but it is a reality of travel, unless you have a sailboat.
Sure. And again, no matter where we are in the world, parts of our conference have to travel. Being in Australia makes it more accessible to those partners that are in Asia and have potentially shorter flight paths. Here in the US, you have long flight paths from Australia to the US.
That's an incredibly important point, actually, is that it's further for some of the people in this room, but it's a lot closer for an awful lot of people in the world. Not just me, obviously, but literally a lot of people in Asia. So that's the thing to consider.
Okay. We'll switch back for a minute. What are the top 2 or 3 issues that the VSC wants to tackle in 2023?
All right, so generally the steering committee often works on proposals. So let's say the elections chair come and want to change the election procedures, we work with them, or the open practices chairs want to introduce more open practices, then we work with them. We do have a really long document. I opened it for this questions of things that we might tackle if there is no proposal on the table. And there's lots of important questions on there. One of the things we've discussed a lot with the paper chairs is conflict of interest detection, how to make sure that the paper review process runs correctly so that all the conflicts that should be declared are declared, and the reviewing is as fair as it should be and as correctly done, ethically done as it should be. Then there is a longstanding question about how many reviewers we need for papers. We've discussed some models about potential, ideas of how to reduce the reviewing load on the community. Then on this document, there's things about how can we make this conference more useful for people from industry. That's 3. The document is much longer, but if you have an issue that you want the steering committee to discuss, then make a proposal. The best is to talk to somebody first that you know from the steering committee and say, I would like you to discuss this topic. How should we go about it? And then we can give you some some feedback on how to do that.
All right, we've got a question for the VEC. Can we spread out the workshops throughout the week and not be lumped into the first 2 days?
We have to talk about this. And I don't have any better question. I think we will take this to the back and discuss this, if this is a better approach not to have this is mainly historically to have these events at the first 2 days. There are pros and cons to distribute them over the whole time. And I think we take it to the back and talk about this and see if this is an option.
All right, we'll switch a little bit to some open access questions. This one I think may be straightforward. Can you say something more about how you think the open access will be charged?
So we haven't seen the official agreement that has been reached, so I can't say too much about this. But usually transformative agreements mean that the authors won't be individually charged for their paper, but that rather institutions pay IEEE to have like their subscription plus the possibility to publish open access. So usually the burden is not on the individual author or author team, but rather on the whole institution. That's how past agreements have been made when there were transformative agreements. I'm not sure how this one has been made, and if anyone has more information on that, I'm more than happy to hear it. But yeah, usually this is how this has been working.
Does that mic work? The stand mic? David can comment more on this.
I can give a little bit more information. IEEE already has the agreements with numerous universities around the world and in the US and several, in most countries and also with companies. So they are already set up to do that model. So it should be very easy for them to do because a lot of authors right now can publish for free open access because of the transformative agreement that they have with IEEE already.
All right, and this one's probably directly for Klaus. Is it still possible to post a preprint open access copy of my Viz paper even after the conference? What about for a TVCG paper that is already published? Can I post my preprint? Is there anything that prevents me from posting my preprint even if after the paper has been accepted to Viz or TVCG?
Well, you can post it somewhere, yeah, sure. You can post it anywhere you like on archive and personal website and so on. You can post that paper, of course.
Go ahead, Lonnie.
Yeah.
One thing to remember, there's a difference between preprint and postprint, right? So a preprint is the version of your paper that has been submitted to the conference or to the journal before the reviews got in. So this can be put online at any time. There's no doubt. Postprint is something different. So that's the author accepted manuscript, and this is something that you can't post all the time. So that would depend on Plan S or other kind of agreements that would have been made. But preprints can be posted at any time on any archiving platforms.
Yeah, but there's one caveat. When once it's accepted, you need to put the copyright of IEEE on it. There's like a special kind of wording you have to put on that paper. So that's.
As part of encouraging more open science, do the open access chairs have plans to draft guidelines or principles for ethical data sharing dissemination? For example, sharing detailed participant study data has the potential toxic combinations of posing identification and participant risks.
Yes. It is something that we're thinking about. So we're not sure exactly of having guidelines per se, but there is definitely something about sharing data, for instance, that can, for instance, sometimes harm participants. So one of the first rules about open data, open material is that you do not share something that you can't share, right? If your RIB doesn't want you to share it, you don't share it. If you think that this is not something you can share anonymously and it's important that anonymity remains, you don't post it. But that being said, we think in most cases, at least in lots of the experiments that we've seen at Viz, there's not a lot of risk. But if you think there's any kind of risk, do not post your data. Try to talk with your IRB about this. This is probably the best thing to do and figure out how you can share your data in some safe ways. There's also platforms that allow for safe access to data repository to selected people that might ask for it later. This is also a possibility.
Great, thanks. We do have one more question here, but I am sorry, I do not know this acronym, but maybe somebody will be able to help me out. What about other contributions or session types at Viz, for example, something like JSM, which I'm sorry, if anybody knows what JSM is, please help me. Oh, thank you. One more time, joint statistical. Oh, joint statistical meeting.
They allow submitted session times.
Okay. So the joint statistical meeting allows different session types to be submitted? I'm sorry, I still am a little bit hard on this question.
JSM lets you propose session topics and have organizing sessions. I think the closest thing we have to it is the applications spotlight thingy. It's like that on steroids.
Okay. Any ideas? I think that'd probably be Beck and VSC question then. Any thoughts on creating these other session types or allowing people to propose novel types of sessions for Viz?
Yeah, so we haven't discussed any model like that, but if there's anyone who wants to write a proposal and say, hey, this would be great for Viz, you should have these and these kinds of sessions, this would make it very attractive for these and these people to come, then, approach us and propose it, and we will discuss it.
Okay, that takes us to the end of our Slido questions. If we do have any burning questions from the audience, feel free to come up to the microphone. We'll give it a second here in case anybody really wants to, but if not, we can end 5 minutes early to let everybody go get a very, very truncated lunch. All right, thank you all for attending the town hall. If you have any questions, please. Great. Thanks, everyone.